Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Council, please be upstanding for the Worshipful, the Mayor of Gedling.
Thank you for coming today. Please remain standing for a minute's silence in dedication to the 28th year anniversary since the Srebrenica massacre, and also we remember the victims of the tragic events in the city that recently occurred. Item 1 is the thought for the day. My chaplain, Father Philip, is unable to attend, so I've asked Councillor Barnes, who will now read a thought for the day.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. What I'm about to read out was what the beautiful star Audrey Hepburn lived by. I try my best to live by it, and as councillors, we all should live by it. You may have councillor in front of your name, but it's not about you. It's about treating people with respect here in this chamber and outside. It's about the people who put you here, the people you look after in your wards and you serve. Remember that. You may have a degree, well done, but it's really not all about you. If only governments, including our own, could remember that, what a wonderful world it would be, just like the song. Here's what Audrey Hepburn lived by. For attractive lips, speak words of kindness. For lovely eyes, seek out the good in people. For a slim figure, share your food with the hungry. For beautiful hair, let a child run its fingers through it once a day. For poise, walk with knowledge, and then you'll never walk alone. We leave a tradition and a future in the tender, loving care of human beings that will never be obsolete. People, much more than things, need to be restored, renewed, revived, reclaimed, and redeemed. Remember, if you need a helping hand, you'll find it at the end of your arm. And as you grow older, you will find you have two arms, one for helping yourself and one for helping others. Just remember your good old days are still ahead of you. So I say, may you have many of them and enjoy them so much, as the lovely Jo Cox, the MP, and the lovely MP Mo Molan never really had the chance. So think how lucky you are. Thank you.
Yeah. Now we go on to item 2. Before we do this, can I remind members, if you want to stand, please use the lectern. The camera and the microphones need you to be sitting to answer questions. So item 2, can I ask the business managers to confirm if we have any apologies, please? Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have apologies from Councillors Viv and Ron McCrossan, and also from Councillor Paul Feeney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Beswick, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Pickering and Councillor Walker.
Councillor Elwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're all present tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. They are all noted. Item 3 will be the Mayor's announcements. The one thing I really want to say to everybody is that my civic service will be on Sunday, the 23rd of July, 2 o'clock at the Good Shepherd Church. I'd be really, really happy if as many of you as possible would be able to attend. We've been very busy trying to organise it, and I want to particularly thank Caroline in the office, who's done a tremendous amount of work in getting that organised. Item 4, to approve the minutes of the meetings held on the 25th of January, the 2nd of March and the 24th of May 2023. Can I ask Councillor Clark to move and Councillor Payne to second, please?
Move, Madam Mayor.
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Item 5 will be the declaration of interests. Are there any declaration of interests? No, thank you. I will move on to the next item. Item 6, petitions under Procedural Rule 7.8.
None received, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I will move on to the next item. Item 7, questions asked by the public under Procedural Rule 7.7.
Madam Mayor, we have received one question as follows. What plans does the Council have to safeguard its financial funds against the risks of fraud?
Councillor Clark will now answer this question.
Let's go up here, Madam Mayor, so the person can see it's being answered. Right, well, thank you whoever sent the question in, and this is the reply. What does the Council have to safeguard its financial funds against risk or fraud? Fraud is the most commonly experienced crime in the UK and costs many billions of pounds every year. The impact of fraud and related offences can be devastating, and victims of fraud ranges from vulnerable individuals to smaller businesses and to major corporations, as well as the public sector, including central government. Here at Gedling, like many councils across the country, fraud comes under the remit of the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee is a key component of the Gedling Borough Council's corporate governance. It provides an independent and high-level focus on the audit, assurance and reporting arrangements that underpin good governance and financial standards. The purpose of the Audit Committee is to provide independent assurance to the Council of adequacy of the risk management framework and the internal control environment. It provides independent review of Gedling Borough Council's governance, risk management and control frameworks, and oversees the financial reporting and annual governance processes. It oversees internal audit and external audit, helping to ensure efficient and effective assurance arrangements are in place. The Audit Committee has many responsibilities, but 3 key functions are as follows. 1, to consider reports on the effectiveness of internal controls and monitor the implementation of agreed actions. 2, to review the assessment of fraud risks and potential harm to the Council from fraud and corruption. And 3, to consider and monitor the counter-fraud strategy, actions and resources. As councillors and officers of Gedling Borough Council, we each have a responsibility to be continually aware of the potential for fraud, to ensure that effective controls are in place to prevent and detect fraud, and to report any suspicions that we may have. This equally applies to all contractors, suppliers and other internal and external stakeholders who have a business relationship with the Council. The Council is committed to reducing fraud, bribery and corruption, and to the promotion of high standards of conduct to ensure that funds are used as they are intended. The Council has a zero tolerance stance and will seek the appropriate disciplinary, regulatory, civil and criminal sanctions against fraudsters and, where possible, will attempt to recover any losses. Excuse me. Referring back to the question, how does the Council safeguard its financial funds? The current Council, currently has several measures already in place. Again, I'll go through the list. We have an approved counter-fraud and corruption strategy, which sets out the Council's approach to combat fraud, bribery and corruption around 7 key themes: culture, deterrence, prevention, detection, investigation, sanction and redress. We have a whistleblowing policy and procedure under which any disclosures or allegations of serious wrongdoing can be reported. All staff at the Council are expected to complete an online fraud awareness training courses. We employ BDO as our internal auditors who report to every audit committee on their progress with the current audit plan and their findings and recommendations resulting from their review of services and effectiveness of internal controls. We also have Mazars as the external auditors who audit the accounts and provide opinions on our value for money arrangements. All these come under the remit of the Audit Committee, which has a cross-party constitution. Our constitution sets out the Council's position in terms of members' code of conduct, declarations of interest, financial regulations and contracts and procurement rules. And finally, the Council has a dedicated fraud awareness page for staff on its intranet and also provides a page to report any possible fraud on its intranet. So hopefully, Madam Mayor, that helps our questioner, and I'm sure if there's any clarity wanted, we'll provide that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. I will now move on to the next item, which is item 8, questions asked by members under Procedural Rule 7, Section 9. We have 4 questions from members. The first is from Councillor Brown. Please ask your question.
Madam Mayor, question from Councillor Lorraine Brown to the portfolio holder for sustainable growth and economy. Funding was allocated and location identified for new business units in Calverton, but nothing further has happened. Could the portfolio holder provide an update on when these new units will be built and opened in Calverton?
Councillor Hollingsworth, please answer the question.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for the question. In 2019, the Council identified the opportunity to extend the number of business units at the Hillcrest site. A planning approval was secured in 2020 to build 4 additional units, and funding applications were submitted both to the ERDF and the D2N2 programmes in 2019-20 and 21 respectively. However, both programmes were oversubscribed and the Council was unsuccessful. The business case viability has always and continues to be dependent upon grant funding, with funders requiring a match contribution from the Council. In June 2023, D2N2 released the Economic Growth Fund Capital Programme, and the Council submitted an application to this fund on the 30th of June 2023. The project costs are anticipated to be 1.388 million, and an application of 0.694 million has been submitted to D2N2. The Council's contribution is anticipated to be funded from a combination of both borrowing and reserves, which is of course subject to Council approvals. It is to be proposed that the capital programme, as part of the Q1 monitoring, be adjusted and Hillcrest to be reinstated as a project. If the grant application is successful, a report will be submitted to Cabinet in August and to Council in September, seeking approval to proceed with the scheme. A requirement of the grant is the work needs to commence prior to the 31st of March 2024, and preparations are also in place to resubmit a planning application in view of the expiry of the permission. We are aware that there continues to be a high demand for industrial units for startups and SMEs, which is reflected in the low voids for these units across the Council's business industrial parks, which is why, prior to the release of the D2N2 Economic Growth and Fund Capital Programme, funding stream, the council has continued to explore the construction of additional units at Hillcrest. If the council is successful, subject to approvals, building works will commence in early 2024, with completion late summer and occupation in the autumn of 2024. Councillor Brown can be assured that this Labour administration has always and will always use every lever, financial and otherwise, and will work actively to promote and sustain our startups, our SMEs, and all our businesses, both in Calverton and across the borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Brown, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Great news about the bid. And if you could just keep us updated with progress, that would be really helpful. And then I can pass that back to the people who've been asking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I will move on to the next question. The second question is from Councillor Adams. Councillor Adams, please ask your question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, what is the annual cost to the borough and per resident for clearing up fly tipping? Thank you.
Sorry. Councillor Paling, can you please answer the question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I apologise that I will be waving my fan furiously because it is so hot in this chamber, and I am sure many of you will have seen me waving this fan over previous years. And thank you, Councillor Adams. As we both attended the county's Joint Waste Management Board meeting this morning, where this was discussed slightly, along with other provisions about waste management, it seems an appropriate time to be addressing it. And as DEFRA reported only this week, fly tipping is a significant blight on our environment, a source of pollution, a potential danger, and a much greater danger than many people realise, to human health and hazard to wildlife, as well as that being nuisance that we all recognise as we're driving along the roads. It also undermines legitimate waste businesses, where unscrupulous operators undercut those operating within the law. The Environmental Services Association's 2021 report into the cost of UK waste crime estimated that the overall cost of fly tipping was £391.8 million a year in 2018-19, making it the costliest form of waste crime. Almost a total of 1.09 million fly tipping incidents in England were reported to the National Waste Data Flow database by local authorities. This was a decrease of 4% from the previous reports because, of course, there was a period of time when all of the household waste management sites were closed due to COVID, and people, I suppose, thought that we wouldn't be out trying to do anything about it either. In answer to your actual question, Councillor Adams, last financial year, the cost for removal of fly tipping in Gedling was calculated at £189,000, which equates to £1.61 per resident. And it was for 1,220 incidents in 2022. This aggregated cost belies a myriad of variables, and I've just got a couple of them. Each job is really dependent on the specific issues it brings with it. For example, if asbestos or other contaminated waste is found, it costs about £300 to £500 per occasion. And we have to call in specialist contractors to take that waste away because we haven't got that facility ourselves. Some cleanups can be done in half an hour, Others take 3 to 4 hours. The larger fly tips can come out at approximately £256 per occasion, and where we carry out resulting investigations into the evidence of ownership and then clean them up, the added costs of the people who go out and do the checking, the wardens, and then the legal team who have to do the prosecution, should we be able to get that far. The smaller ones, 2 to 3 black bags, can be done for really little cost in comparison. Labour costs of collection are billed to the general overall staff labour budget costs and are therefore quite complex to analyse. We don't have a list breakdown of the size of each fly tip reported, but each complaint is logged in the statistics. But although even there may be duplicate reports that you can't pick up terribly easily, so the figures are always slightly, potentially, shall we say, at risk, because it's not a precise science as some of our things are. Catching perpetrators is difficult, but we do prosecute. Environment Minister Rebecca Powell has announced increases in fines for litter, graffiti and fly tipping as part of the crackdown on antisocial behaviour, part of the Prime Minister's action plan to clamp down on all antisocial behaviour and build stronger communities. So this statutory notice for the increase was only announced this week, and the penalty increases will possibly come into effect at the end of July. The maximum amount for those caught fly tipping will increase from £400 to £1,000. The maximum amount for those who breach their household waste, which is a duty of care for residents, will increase from £400 to £600. So I want to take this opportunity to advise residents that they can help to ensure fly tipping is reduced by only using Environment Agency registered waste carriers, keeping a receipt for waste that is taken away by the licensed contractor. They should always ask to see the licence. Breaching this duty of care for disposing waste is increasing. A cheap quote may not be cheerful in the long run if we are able to find you and prosecute. And can I also take another opportunity to thank all those volunteer litter pickers throughout the borough for the sterling work they do in collecting rubbish, including the small fly tips, and notifying us of those so we can collect them more quickly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Adams, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, I would, Madam Mayor, please. But can I just first of all thank you, Marge, for such a fantastic answer, and one that was incredibly fact-based, which is fantastic to have, and I appreciate that genuinely. What I suppose, taking on from what your point around the awful damage that this does, not only to our environment potentially, but also in terms of costings. Specifically in our own areas, we have issues in such as Cats Lane in Stoke Bardolph, or Windbush Lane in Calverton, and Catfoot Lane in Lamley, specific sort of, if you like, out of the way places maybe that often get littered. I wonder if you would agree with me that increasing the level of CCTV, therefore, across our area of Gedling would be useful not only to reduce that environmental damage, but also in a cost reduction basis for the council as well.
Thank you. There's no easy answer to that, Councillor Adams, in that as soon as you get a place, the fly tippers spot that we put the camera there and move on. It is difficult to keep moving the cameras. We have to have good reason. It has to be argued for as well, never mind the cost. And I understand that the applications are there, and we are continually looking to improve the service that we do provide. Gedling is not so bad as some other authorities that are even more rural than Gedling, where it is almost impossible for them to close the spots that they find or to monitor the highways and byways that they have. But we are continuing to look at it. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. I will move on to the next question. The third is also from Councillor Brown. Please ask your question.
Question to the portfolio holder for climate change and natural habitat. The Football Foundation has identified Calverton Top Club as an ideal location for a 3G pitch, which will cater for several football teams in and around the village. Calverton Parish Council have allocated £50,000 towards the cost. Will GBC allocate officer time to work alongside the Parish Council, Councillor Walker, Councillor Elliott and myself to secure additional funding to help deliver this much-needed facility?
Councillor Wheeler, would you please answer the question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Brown, for the question. This council takes its health and wellbeing priorities very, very seriously. So the Health Development Officer in the communities team will be available to offer advice to the club involved and signpost to any relevant funding options. That officer has already been in open dialogue with Calverton Miners Welfare FC about additional funding options. Finding additional funding for football facilities beyond the Football Foundation, unless they are part of a wider multi-sport approach, remains incredibly challenging. As part of its strategic review of community facilities, the Council is currently reviewing the playing pitch strategy, and this will determine future priorities for investment in all outdoor sport provision based on a comprehensive assessment of the quality, quantity and demand for sport locally. Future investment will rely heavily on securing external funding. The local clubs based at Calverton Miners Welfare have been consulted as part of that process, and we are now working with our partners, Sport England, Nottinghamshire FA and the Football Foundation to finalise the priorities within the strategy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you. When can we expect the playing pitch strategy to be published?
The playing pitch strategy will be published very soon. It's in the process at the moment of being, the officers are currently working on that strategy at the moment, so it will be delivered shortly. What I will say, and I will say this, is can I just ask the Calvo 3 what you've actually been doing to secure funding? I know the parish is given 50k, but what are you doing to get your own government to provide funding? Because obviously sports provision, well, sports generally speaking, has been halved. It's halved over the last 13 years. You've got an MP, Mark Spencer, locally, who you could have been lobbying for additional funding. Yeah, okay. Yeah. There was a lot of rhetoric in 2012 around the Olympics, okay? A lot of promises. Sorry.
Sorry, you must keep your answer to the question.
But what I would say is, what are you doing yourselves to actually secure additional funding? I know the parish is giving 50k, but what is the 50k for? What part of the 3G is the 50k for?
Point of order, Madam Mayor. What's this questions to portfolio holders, I thought?
Councillor Wheeler, you're not allowed to ask questions. It's not in the Constitution. Sorry, so you have to just answer the supplementary question.
Okay, well, I've answered the supplementary question. The playing pitch strategy will be provided as a report in due course. Thank you.
Is that all right? Yeah. Right. Thank you. Right, the final question is from Councillor Greensmith. Please ask your question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the portfolio holder for sustainable growth and economy. Each year, this council spends over £200,000 of taxpayers' money on bed and breakfast temporary accommodation, with the average stay of over 4 months. 85 affordable rental properties are expected at Rolleston Drive development in Arnold. What impact, if any, will that site, being on hold while the manufacturer of the factory-built homes is sold? What has this council waiting list, and what implications will this impose?
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth, please answer the question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Greensmith, for the question. Clearly, the news that Ilke Homes had gone into administration is hugely disappointing, not only because the delivery of much-needed affordable homes will be delayed, but also because this Labour authority fought hard to get the site developed. Tory-controlled Nottinghamshire County Council left this site derelict for almost a decade, and even after an arson attack in 2017, and despite intense lobbying from the Deputy Leader and local councillors, it still took several years for them to take action. The collapse of Ilke Homes was not foreseen and came less than 2 weeks before the first properties were due to be occupied. It will obviously have a negative impact on an already stretched housing waiting list, as those people who'd been allocated properties will now have to be housed elsewhere. Rolleston Drive was due to provide 85 affordable homes. There are currently 605 live applications on the home search system, so the allocation of 85 properties would have seen the current numbers of households on the waiting list reduced by 14%. However, this is not a true reflection of the situation, as new applications are received daily, and the 85 properties were planned to be delivered in 11 tranches over a period of time. For the same reason, it is not possible to assess any financial implications at this time. Councillor Greensmith mentions cost to the council twice in her question, and whilst this is important, the cost to those affected cannot be underestimated. There are individuals and families behind these figures, Councillor Greensmith, whose hopes of moving into a new permanent and secure home within the next few weeks have been dashed. Councillor Greensmith notes that £200,000 a year is spent on bed and breakfast. Why do you think this is, Councillor Greensmith? Do you ever wonder why the number of homeless applications continues to rise in Gedling? From 567 in 2018-19 to 874 in 22-23. On the 10th of July, the Housing Options section had already received 227 new applications for the financial year 23-24, and there is every indication that this number will continue to rise. I know that Council would want me to acknowledge and thank our staff, who work tirelessly with residents, private sector and social landlords, and mortgage providers to prevent people being made homeless whenever they can. We are in the middle of a housing crisis, Councillor Greensmith, caused by 13 years of Tory austerity, stagnant wages, failure to upgrade benefits in line with inflation, at a time when there's been a 12.6 average increase in rent, a local housing allowance that does not cover the cost of most rental properties in the borough, people with 2 and 3 jobs still unable to cover their costs, a lack of house building nationally. This year will see the lowest number of houses completed since the Second World War. A promise to replace right to buy properties on a one-to-one basis, broken. Almost 60,000 homes sold under right to buy will not be replaced by 2030. 1.2 million households on waiting lists for social housing, the highest number since 2016. The number of children in temporary accommodation, the highest level for almost 20 years. A promise to end no-fault evictions, broken. 10 times as much spent on housing benefits than on bricks and mortar. And now a Tory mortgage time bomb with predictions that more than 1 million households will be paying an extra £500 a month by 2026. ONS statistics yesterday show that if you're working, you're still getting poorer. Only this morning, Madam Mayor, I read that Michael Gove's department is handing back £1.9 billion meant to tackle England's housing crisis after struggling to find projects to spend it on. Well, if you're listening, Mr Gove, send a bit over to Gedling, please, because we can use it. As they say, Madam Mayor, you just could not make it up. A catalogue of incompetence and chaos, and a Tory government of millionaires completely out of touch with the everyday lives of Gedling residents. Contrast that with the approach taken by this Labour administration. The purchase of 15 properties and leasing of others, giving us 29 properties so that people can move out of bed and breakfast accommodation as quickly as possible. 497, the highest number since the 1970s. One of few, if not the only council, to retain its council tax reduction scheme to support our most vulnerable residents, prevent debt and possible homelessness. While the raison d'etre of this Tory government seems to be serving ourselves, improving our payday, this Labour administration has been and always will be about serving people, improving lives.
Thank you. Councillor Greensmith, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. Your answer to my question deflected what I was actually asking. My question asked, what was going to be the impact. Both, you've talked about Nottingham County Council. At the time that the land was available, I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, that Labour were in an administration at the County Hall. In your list of achievements...
Sorry, Councillor Greensmith, the supplementary question must be relevant to the question that was first asked.
Okay. So, going back to my question then, did your department carry out any due diligence on the company before works began, and what steps...
Sorry.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, I'm not convinced she's finished asking the question before somebody's chiming in. Can we complete the question? Thank you.
Sorry, what the Mayor holds authority in the chamber, and I think that whether you agree or disagree, you have to agree with my assessment of the situation. I think there was a point of order there, though, that needs to be answered. Is that what it was, a point of order, Councillor Greensmith?
Well, I haven't actually asked my supplementary question.
Yes, I would like you to ask the supplementary question.
Thank you. Right, back to my supplementary question then. Did your department carry out any due diligence on the company before works began? And what steps are you taking to ensure the site is finished as soon as possible?
Yeah, that's a relevant question.
Madam Mayor, this was an arrangement between Jigsaw Homes and Ilka, funded, I believe, substantially through Homes England. It was not an arrangement that involved Gedling Borough Council. We have no financial commitment or obligation. Ilka Homes, I can tell you, I've visited the site, and it's a good product. They have said that the reason they've had to go into an administration is government uncertainty and economic chaos.
Thank you. There cannot be any more questions, so thank you very much, Councillor Hollingsworth. Did I run that right? Thank you. Now I'm sure we'll all be very calm. Item 9, budget outturn and budget carry forwards. Recommendation is on page 37. Councillor Clark to move and Councillor Payne to second, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move it.
Seconded, Madam Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Councillor Martin Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just refer to page 44? I'm not trying to nitpick here at all. I think there's been a figure missed off. This is 4.1. I was delighted, like all of us, that we were able to give the £250 to our lowest paid, really hard-working staff. The £250. It does say there that I think the total has been omitted. I'd like to know what the total was, or the number of workers that it affected. And equally, is there any feedback from those workers? Was it well received? I'm sure it was.
Yes. Okay, anybody else would like to ask a question? No? So, Councillor Payne then, please.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Smith. It's a very valid question. At the time that the decision was taken, which was subject to approval, I think both in Cabinet and in Council, there was a full report that set that out, and so it will be there on the public record, the specific figures. I think it's also maybe even in the pay policy statement and came through Appointments and Conditions Services Committee, so we'll get you the specific figure, but it's there on the public record, and I'm sure you were in the meeting when that decision was taken, and we'll be party to that information, but we'll make sure that you've got it after the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Yes, I just wondered whether this document just needed updating as well.
It's the wording, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, the figure will be reflected in the final outturn figures, so whether it's in the paragraph or not, it will be reflected in the final outturn figures, and I think the point I'm making is the figure is already on the public record when we took the decision.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Right, we now go to the vote. Yes, is anybody else? Anybody else want to ask a question? Can't see anybody. Right, so we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please. Oh, I vote as well, don't I? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Item 10, Annual Treasury Activity Report 2022 to 2023. The recommendations are on page 81. Councillor Clark to move and Councillor Payne to second.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Seconded, Madam Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Anyone like to speak on this? No, I think we'll go to the vote. Yes? Can't see any hands. No. All those in favour, please. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Item 11, amendment to the committee schedule. The recommendations are on page 101. Councillor Clark to move and Councillor Payne to second, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that.
Seconded, Madam Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Would anyone like to speak on this? Give a chance. No. All those in favour, please show. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Item 12, amendment to committee memberships. The recommendations are on page 105. Councillor Clark to move and Councillor Payne to second, please.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Seconded, Madam Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Would anyone like to speak on this? No? All those in favour, please? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Item 13, Member Allowances Scheme and Recruitment to IRP. The recommendations are on page 109. Councillor Clark to move and Councillor Payne to second, please.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Seconded, Madam Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Would anyone like to speak on this? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you cast your mind back, some members I appreciate weren't here at the time as they are new to the council, but we put a motion through to change at budget time and an amendment at budget time to change the way that remuneration was done in this council. And, you know, at the obviously they are allowed to vote against that change, which was to reduce the councillors' fund remuneration and redistribute that to residents. I just want to pick up on a couple of points within that. And I want to first of all thank the officers, of course, for the report. But during that debate specifically, there was some confusion around terminology about what we should be calling or shouldn't be calling the councillors' pot, the councillors' fund, the councillors' whatever you want to call it. Thank you. And it seems that on page 50 and page 71 in the official report, it's been called the councillors' pot. So are we officially calling it the councillors' pot? And if so, fine, but let's just get that across that. Let's ensure that language is across the council. If not, what are we calling it? Are we going to call it, because obviously we did receive criticism for specifically calling it that, but like I said, now it's officially in the report. And also there's a bit of confusion around the actual percentages that this is increasing by. There's been reports of 3.5%. There's been a report of 2.66%. Which is in line with the senior leadership, 3.5% as well. So can we just have a confirmation exactly what the percentage increase is on those allowances, please, as well as, like I said, if we can have the clarity on the terminology so we can all get off the language and just focus on the actual numbers, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? No? Councillor Payne.
Nothing further really to add. I do think we're dancing on the head of a pin a little bit, really. I mean, the councillors' fund is the councillors' fund, whether you want to call it councillors' community fund, councillors' pot, you know, councillors' fund, councillors' money. You know, it's a fund that people use, and I think the last budget outturn report that we've already approved shows that everybody used up their funds. So I'm not really sure the point that Councillor Adams is making. As to his question that he's asked about the increase, it's there reflected in the report. This is a carryover report from the previous meeting that we had, so I'm not quite sure I understand the point of confusion that he's raising.
Well, it doesn't matter now. People that were actually voting on item 13, which is the member allowances scheme and recruitment to the IRP, just to make that clear. All those in favour, please show. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Oh, sorry, was that an abstention? Item 14, review of the, sorry, was there somebody? Oh, right. A review of the procedural standing orders. The recommendations are on page 121. Councillor Clark to move and Councillor Payne to second, please.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Seconded, Madam Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Would anyone like to speak on this? Councillor Elwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just to perhaps give a little bit of background to this, maybe for new members, there was some discussions in the autumn concerning changing the process of putting in motions and amendments to the council meetings, and a proposed protocol was put into the public domain, but there was some concern that it didn't really, its sort of legitimacy was a little bit unclear because it didn't really, wasn't bedded into the constitution. So this is a helpful process just to make sure that everything fits in nicely with the constitution, and hopefully when the working group meets we'll be able to finalise that process without too much acrimony, shall we say, and that we can all agree to something that everybody's happy with. But certainly happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Payne.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Elwood for his context and background. I do think it's very interesting, Councillor Elwood, that you make the point and describe this cross-party balance, politically balanced review as helpful, to use your words, not mine. Somewhat surprised then to see that you have put a motion that is contentious, you use the word non-acrimonious, at the end of this debate today to change procedural standing orders. And I would have thought if you'd got principled views about how procedural standing orders ought to be changed, the best place to do that would be to raise them in the cross-party working group that's politically balanced, that you've just yourself said in quotes is helpful. Whereas I think the motion that we've got at the end of the agenda, which in some respects personalises the issue to people who are office holders in the chair and vice chair of overview and scrutiny, is quite unhelpful. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
No, thank you. All those in favour, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. Item 15, taxi licensing fee review. The recommendations are on page 125. Councillor Clark to move and Councillor Payne to second, please.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Seconded, Madam Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Would anyone like to speak on this? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank all the officers that have been involved in sorting out this mess, put it mildly. But also a big thank you to the member of the public that brought this to the council's attention. I think we can draw a line under it all now. It has been sorted. I'm pleased it's been sorted, but I think equally, on behalf of the taxi drivers, I think they're very, very pleased as well. Thank you.
Councillor Payne, you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This is clearly quite a comprehensive report that a lot of time and effort has gone into by officers, not just by officers, but also by elected members on a cross-party basis who have raised and asked questions and scrutinised. Particular thanks to Councillor Paling and her wider committee when she was stewarding that committee, but a particular thanks to our officers as well. This has clearly been a matter of public interest. This has clearly been a matter that has been under intense scrutiny and challenge, quite rightly so, but actually officers who aren't in elected office, who don't stand for elected office and stand for criticism, have come in for criticism at various points throughout this debate, and I want to put on record my sincere thanks to them for trying to resolve this issue, which has clearly been a complicated one. Anybody who's ever tried to navigate the legislation and the guidance and the rules around taxi licensing, and indeed the broader legislation that sits around this, it's not easy to navigate. It's not always straightforward, and I think our officers have done a very, very good job. And I'm certainly a big enough person to sit here and say that if there is criticism that should be levied, the criticism should be levied at us as elected councillors, and I'm certainly willing to take my fair share of responsibility as Deputy Leader of the Council here. What I don't like to see is our officers who are not elected, who do not stand in the public domain, taking unfair criticism, certainly in certain arenas where they can't defend themselves. So I just want to wholeheartedly, on behalf of the council, put on my record my thanks to officers for doing, I think, a very diligent, thorough job here. And I think it shows that actually where this council, we can choose to use whatever words we want, but I think as politicians, it's incumbent on us sometimes just to raise our game and not sink into the gutter using phrases like mess. A mistake clearly was made. There was an issue clearly that didn't fall in line with the legislation. This council has been big enough to demonstrate, put its hand up and say that actually we weren't completely in line with the legislation, and to seek to try and rectify it. And that is what officers with the stewardship of elected members have done. And I don't think for one second, which there has been a hint of and a whiff of at points throughout this debate, you can spot it a mile off. An issue like this should not be used as a party political football, and it's disappointing at points that it has been seen to be used as a party political football. And I think it's incumbent on all of us in this chamber to raise our game and to be better than that. But in saying that, Madam Mayor, a huge thank you to our to our officers for a very diligent and thorough report. I hope this does remedy the situation, and I hope that it brings a scintilla of justice for those who have been arguing for the justice that they quite rightly deserve throughout the process. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Madam. Yeah, just to reaffirm those points made by both Councillor Smith and Councillor Payne, that there's a lot of incredible work that's gone into what is a very complex problem, having been caused by, as Michael's rightly pointed out, issues with checking in on up-to-date legislation. So look, like we said, we are where we are. We're glad that it's been resolved. I'm, chuffed to bits the council's been able to come to a resolution and create what is a very strong report in response, and thank all officers for the work that's gone into that. Thank you.
Am I the last one to sum up?
I don't know, anybody else want to speak? Make sure everybody gets their opportunity as they should. No.
Yeah, it's just really to back up comments that have been made already by Councillor Payne, Councillor Adams there. I do not like the word mess, because I don't think it's a mess. I think it's proved that local democracy works. Somebody has seen something. It's been investigated properly by our teams. It's been looked at. It's been looked at always. And I think it gives confidence to the future that if people spot these things, we'll deal with it. And retribution's been made. The people, the taxi driver have returned some funding, and the decisions have been made. I think we should now say that's it, end of. But thank you particularly to our staff, because it's taken many hours to actually do this and to go through it. And for, I don't know, I keep saying to the lawyer's side, why the hell do you want to be a lawyer? Because it is a minefield. But thank you. And we'll move on, hopefully. And I hope that satisfies the person who put the original complaint in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Right, all those in favour, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Item 16, questions by members concerning any matter dealt with by executive or a committee, procedural rule 7, section 10. There are 26 sets of minutes on this agenda. If any member would like to ask a question or make a comment about any of the minutes, would you please indicate to the page number that you are speaking about? First of all, minutes A to M. Any comments or questions? No, making sure, no. Minutes N to Z. Any comments or questions? Thank you. I will move on to the next item. Item 17, to consider comments under Procedural Rule 7, Section 11.
None received, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I will move on to the next section. Item 18, motions under Procedural Rule 7.12. Motion has been received and is at the front of the agenda pack. Can Councillor Elwood to propose, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will, for the purposes of the meeting, read out the motion, although I'm conscious that the motion will not be debated tonight due to the procedural rules. The motion reads, this council notes the Overview and Scrutiny Committee has a vital role in scrutinising the work of the Cabinet. That to strengthen this role, it is appropriate for the Chair and Vice Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee not to be members of the Council's ruling group. This Council therefore resolves to add the following words to the existing section of the Constitution at Section 4, the full Council, 7.22, election of a Chair of a Committee. The Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee shall be a member of the largest political group that is different to that of the Leader of the Council. The Vice Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee shall not be a member of the same political group as that of the Leader of the Council, and that the change to the Constitution would come into force at the 2024 annual meeting of the Council for the 24-25 council year. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can Councillor Hughes second, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Formally second and reserve the right to speak at the next meeting. Thank you.
This motion relates to a change in the procedure rules. The motion shall stand adjourned without discussion to the next ordinary meeting of the Council. I'd say thank you to everyone for attending the meeting. This is the final item, so I will now close this meeting.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Council, please be upstanding for the worshipful the Mayor of Gedling.